The gunshots echoed through the canyon walls as Willow Ellis crouched lower behind the rotting log, her trembling hands clasped over her infant son's mouth to silence his cries. 3 days on the run had left her dress torn, her feet blistered, and her spirit nearly broken. But she wouldn't give up, not when little Thomas was all she had left in this cruel world. The year was 1875, and the Arizona Territory showed no mercy to a woman alone. Especially not to a woman who had fled from a man as powerful as George Thornton, the cattle baron who had enslaved her through a forced marriage after her parents died of fever last winter. 8 months of hell had followed before she discovered she was with child. Thornton's drunken rage upon hearing the news had been the final straw. He'd never wanted children, only a young wife to control and showcase. That night, she had slipped away with nothing but the clothes on her back and what meager savings she had hidden away. Now, Thomas was 3 months old, and Thornton's men were still hunting them. The bounty on her head would keep them coming. She'd heard their horses earlier, moving through the canyon below. Soon they would find her trail again. A twig snapped nearby. Willow froze, her heart hammering so hard she feared it might wake her sleeping baby. She curled her body around Thomas, tucking him deeper into the hollow beneath the fallen tree trunk. If they found her, she would fight to her last breath. She had stolen one of Thornton's pistols before fleeing, but it held only 2 bullets now. One for the first man who tried to take her son, and one for herself if capture became inevitable. The footsteps grew closer, not the heavy tread of Thornton's men, but a lighter, more deliberate step. A shadow fell over her hiding place. Willow tightened her grip on the pistol tucked into her skirts. "I know you're there," a deep voice said quietly. "I'm not looking to harm you." Willow didn't respond, her eyes fixed on the pair of worn leather boots now visible at the edge of her hideaway. The man crouched down, and she caught sight of a weathered face beneath a dusty hat. His eyes were a striking blue against his sun-darkened skin, and he wore no badge or marking that would identify him as one of Thornton's hired guns. "The men tracking you passed through the South Ridge about an hour ago," he continued, his voice low. "They're heading the wrong way, but they'll figure that out by nightfall." Thomas stirred against her chest, letting out a small whimper. Willow tried to shift to hide him better, but the movement only caused him to fuss more. The stranger's eyes softened as he noticed her protective stance. "You've got a little one," he observed. Not a question, but a simple statement of fact. Willow raised the pistol, her hand shaking but her aim true. "Take one more step and I'll shoot you where you stand." Instead of backing away, the man slowly lowered himself to his knees, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair streaked with gold from the sun. He placed the hat on the ground beside him, then raised his empty hands. "My name is August Keller. I've been tracking those men for 2 days, trying to figure out who they're hunting." His voice remained steady, gentle even. "I have a camp about 3 miles from here. Food, clean water, and no one would think to look for you there." "Why would you help me?" Willow demanded, her voice hoarse from thirst and exhaustion. "What do you want?" "Nothing you're not willing to give," August replied. "I've seen what Thornton does to people who cross him. No one deserves that, especially not a mother and child." Thomas began to cry in earnest now, his tiny face reddening with the effort. Willow tried to soothe him, but days without proper rest or food had drained her milk, leaving him hungry and distressed. August didn't move, still kneeling before her. "Show me," he said softly, his eyes meeting hers with unexpected tenderness. "Let me see him. He's ours now." Willow blinked, confusion crossing her face. "Ours? Anyone Thornton wants dead is a friend of mine," August explained, "and I protect my friends. So yes, ours to protect, until you decide otherwise." For a long moment Willow stared at him, searching for deceit in those clear blue eyes and finding none. Slowly she lowered the pistol and shifted Thomas in her arms, revealing his small face, scrunched in discomfort. August's expression softened further. "He's a fine-looking boy," he said, a small smile touching his lips. "How old?" "3 months," Willow replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "His name is Thomas." "Thomas," August repeated, nodding as if approving the choice. "Madam, I know you've got no reason to trust a stranger, but night's coming and those men will be circling back. We need to move before they pick up your trail again." Willow hesitated, clutching Thomas closer. "How do I know you're not working for Thornton?" August's jaw tightened. "Thornton and his kind have been trying to run small ranchers like me out of this territory for years. 2 months ago, his men burned down my neighbor's place when they refused to sell. The whole family died in the fire." His voice grew hard. "I don't work for men who murder innocent people." Something in his tone, the raw honesty of his anger, convinced Willow more than any smooth promises could have. With Thomas still crying against her shoulder, she made her decision. "I can't go much further today," she admitted. "And he needs milk. Real food." August nodded. "My horse is tethered about 50 yards back. I have a goat at my camp that provides milk. It's not ideal for a baby, but it's better than nothing until we can find a wet nurse." He stood slowly, replacing his hat. "May I?" he asked, holding out his arms for the baby. After a moment's hesitation, Willow handed Thomas to him, surprised by the natural way August cradled the infant against his broad chest. Thomas's cries immediately softened to whimpers. "Well, I'll be," August murmured. "He's got a strong grip for such a little fellow." Indeed, the baby had latched onto his finger with surprising strength. Willow tucked the pistol back into her skirt pocket and allowed August to help her to her feet. Her legs nearly buckled after hours of crouching, and she had to lean against him momentarily to steady herself. "Sorry," she whispered, embarrassed by her weakness. "Don't be," August replied. "You've likely traveled further on foot these past days than most men would manage on horseback." They made their way carefully through the scrubby underbrush to where August's horse waited a sturdy chestnut gelding that nickered softly at their approach. August handed Thomas back to Willow while he adjusted the saddle. "I'll walk and lead him," he explained. "You and the little one ride. It's about an hour to my place." Willow allowed him to help her into the saddle, settling Thomas securely against her chest. Her body ached with fatigue, but for the first time in days she felt a small flicker of hope. As they traveled, August kept up a steady stream of quiet conversation, pointing out landmarks and telling her about his small ranch. 10 acres, a modest cabin he'd built himself, a few cattle, some chickens, and the goat he'd mentioned. He'd been in the Arizona Territory for 5 years, having come west from Pennsylvania after the war. "Were you a soldier?" Willow asked, noting the straight-backed way he carried himself. August nodded. "Union cavalry. Spent 3 years fighting, then another year just trying to forget what I'd seen." He glanced back at her. "What about you? Before Thornton, I mean." Willow hesitated, unaccustomed to speaking about herself. "My father was a school teacher in Missouri. After the war, we came west for his health consumption. He and my mother built a small house near Silver Creek, about 40 miles east of Thornton's ranch. When they died last winter, Thornton offered me a position as a housekeeper." The bitterness in her voice must have been evident, for August's expression darkened. But that wasn't what he really wanted. "No," Willow confirmed. "A week after I arrived, he informed me we would be married. Said it was that, or he'd make sure I ended up working in one of the saloons in town." She looked down at Thomas's sleeping face. "I chose what I thought was the lesser evil." August was silent for a long moment. "Thornton has no children?" "He had a son from his first marriage. The boy died of fever 2 years ago. His wife died shortly after in an accident." Willow hesitated. "Though there were rumors in town that it wasn't entirely accidental." "And when you told him about your baby?" Willow's arms tightened around Thomas. He said no child of mine would ever inherit what was his, that he'd see it given to the orphanage in Tucson before he'd acknowledge it. Her voice hardened. That night, he drank more than usual. When he passed out, I took what I could carry and ran. August nodded, his expression grim but not surprised. Thornton's not known for his charitable nature. As the sun began to set, they crested a small rise, and Willow saw August's ranch spread out before them, a neat cabin with a covered porch, a small barn, and a corral where a few cattle grazed. Smoke rose from the chimney, and a dog came bounding out to greet them, barking excitedly. "Down, Scout," August commanded, and the black and white border collie immediately sat, though his tail continued to wag furiously. "You left a fire burning?" Willow asked, surprised. August shook his head. "My ranch hand, Miguel, must have returned early. He helps out a few days a week, good man. Came up from Mexico about 10 years ago." Willow tensed. "Can he be trusted?" "With your life," August assured her. "He lost his sister to men like Thornton. He won't betray you." As they approached the cabin, the door opened, and a middle-aged Mexican man stepped out, his weathered face breaking into a smile when he saw August. The smile faltered slightly when he noticed Willow and the baby, replaced by a look of concern. "Señor August," he called, coming down the steps. "You have found trouble, I see." "Trouble found them first, Miguel," August replied, helping Willow down from the horse. "This is Willow and her son Thomas. They'll be staying with us for a while." Miguel nodded, his dark eyes taking in Willow's disheveled appearance and the sleeping infant. "Thornton's men were asking questions in town yesterday, offering money for information about a woman and a baby." August's jaw tightened. "Did they seem to be looking in this direction?" "No, they focused on the trails heading north, toward the territories." Miguel looked at Willow. "The señora needs rest and food. I will prepare something." Willow found herself guided into the cabin, which was surprisingly clean and well-ordered for a bachelor's dwelling. A fire burned in the stone hearth, warming the main room, which served as both kitchen and living area. A wooden table with 4 chairs sat in one corner, and a comfortable-looking chair was positioned near the fireplace. "The bedroom is through there," August said, pointing to a door on the far wall. "You can use it. Miguel and I will sleep out here." "I couldn't possibly," Willow began to protest. "You need proper rest," August insisted. "And privacy. There's a wash basin in there as well. I'll heat some water for you." Too exhausted to argue further, Willow nodded gratefully. While August busied himself with the water and Miguel began preparing a meal, she sat in the chair by the fire, rocking Thomas gently. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to relax slightly, the warmth of the fire and the safety of walls around her lulling her into a drowsy state. She was startled awake by August's gentle touch on her shoulder. "The water's ready," he said softly, "and Miguel's made some soup. Let me hold the little one while you wash up." Willow hesitated, then carefully transferred Thomas to August's arms. The baby stirred but didn't wake, settling against the man's broad chest with a contented sigh. In the small bedroom, Willow found a basin of steaming water, a bar of soap that smelled faintly of pine, and a clean towel. On the bed lay a man's shirt, much too large for her but cleaner than anything she'd worn in weeks. The simple act of washing away the dirt and grime of her journey brought tears to her eyes. She changed into the offered shirt, which hung nearly to her knees, and used the soap to rinse out her own dress as best she could. By the time she emerged, her dark blonde hair was damp but clean, and she felt somewhat human again. August sat at the table, still holding Thomas, who had awakened and was staring up at the stranger with curious eyes. Miguel was ladling soup into bowls, the rich aroma making Willow's stomach growl audibly. "Come, eat," Miguel urged. "The little one has been patient, but I think he is hungry too." "I've heated some goat's milk," August added. "It's cooling now, Do you have something to feed him with? Willow shook her head. I've been nursing him, but my milk. She trailed off, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. Miguel fashioned something while you were washing, August said, nodding toward a small bundle on the table. His sister had children, so he knows more about these things than I do. The something turned out to be a cleverly made feeding device, a small pouch of clean cloth with a corner that had been twisted to form a kind of nipple. Miguel demonstrated how to fill it with milk and let the baby suckle from the cloth tip. It is not perfect, he apologized, but it will work until we can find something better. Willow's eyes filled with tears again, overwhelmed by this simple kindness. Thank you, she whispered, taking the device. Both of you. They ate in companionable silence, Willow devouring 2 bowls of the hearty stew while feeding Thomas with Miguel's improvised bottle. The baby seemed to accept the goat's milk well enough, drinking eagerly before falling back to sleep. After the meal, Miguel excused himself to sleep in the barn, despite Willow's protests that she could take that space instead. A woman and child should not sleep in a barn, he said firmly. I am comfortable there. It is warm, and I prefer to be near the animals. When he had gone, August added more wood to the fire and poured 2 cups of coffee. You should know, he said as he handed one to Willow, that Thornton won't give up easily. Even if you make it to another territory, he has connections. Men like him usually do. Willow nodded, cradling the warm cup between her hands. I know. I thought perhaps California, or even further north to Oregon. August considered this. Both are possibilities, but the journey would be difficult with a young child. He hesitated. There might be another way. Willow looked up, meeting his gaze. What do you mean? Thornton is looking for a woman traveling alone with a baby, but a family, a husband, wife, and child, would attract less attention. August's voice remained steady, though a faint color touched his cheeks. If you were to stay here, as my wife, it would provide protection for both you and Thomas. Willow stared at him, stunned by the suggestion. You're proposing marriage? To a woman you just met today? Not exactly, August clarified. I'm proposing an arrangement. You would have my name and my protection. We would present ourselves as a family to the outside world. In private, you would have your own space and independence. He paused. Unless at some point, you wished for something different. Willow set her cup down carefully. Why would you do this? You don't know me. I could be anyone, a criminal, You're a mother protecting her child. August interrupted gently. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. And what do you get from this arrangement? Willow asked, suspicion edging back into her voice. August's smile was rueful. Company, for one thing. It gets lonely out here. His expression grew more serious. And a purpose beyond just surviving. I've been drifting since the war, Miss Ellis. Building this place gave me something to focus on, but... He gestured around the cabin. A house isn't a home without people to fill it. Willow studied him in the firelight, this stranger who had offered sanctuary with no apparent ulterior motive. Everything she had experienced with men, from her father's well-meaning but strict guidance to Thornton's brutal domination, had taught her to be wary of male intentions. Yet there was something in August Keller's direct gaze that spoke of honesty. I need time to think, she finally said. August nodded, rising from his chair. Of course, take all the time you need. The offer stands, regardless of your answer. He picked up their empty cups. You should get some rest. The bedroom door has a lock, if that makes you more comfortable. The simple acknowledgement of her fear and need for security touched Willow deeply. Thank you, she said quietly. That night, lying in August's bed with Thomas sleeping beside her, Willow considered her options. She could continue running, always looking over her shoulder, never certain if Thornton's reach had extended to whatever new place she found. Or she could accept August's unusual offer, gaining the protection of his name and home, while she figured out a more permanent solution. The decision seemed clear in the light of practicality, yet something held her back. Perhaps the last remnants of the independent spirit that had driven her to flee in the first place, or maybe just the wariness of placing her trust in another man after Thornton's betrayal. As dawn broke, Willow emerged from the bedroom to find August already awake, cooking breakfast over the fire. The scent of coffee and frying bacon filled the cabin. "Morning," he greeted her, his voice low to avoid waking Thomas, who still slept in her arms. "Did you rest well?" "Better than I have in months," Willow admitted. She took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about your proposal." August nodded, his expression carefully neutral as he flipped the bacon in the pan. "And?" "If I accept," Willow said slowly, "I need to know that this is truly an arrangement of convenience, that you won't—" She struggled to find the words. "That I won't expect a true wife's duties," August finished for her, his voice gentle but matter-of-fact. "I wouldn't, not unless that was something you freely chose, in your own time." Willow studied him, finding only sincerity in his features. "Then yes," she said quietly. "I accept your offer, Mr. Keller." Relief flashed across August's face, followed by a warm smile. "August," he corrected. "If we're to be husband and wife in the eyes of the world, you should use my given name." "August," Willow repeated, the name feeling strange yet somehow right on her lips. "And I'm Willow." He nodded, turning back to the stove. "Welcome home, Willow." The days that followed fell into a surprisingly comfortable routine. August worked the ranch with Miguel's help, while Willow focused on recovering her strength and caring for Thomas. The cabin, functional but sparse under August's bachelor care, began to take on a more home-like feel as Willow added small touches: wildflowers in a jar on the table, curtains fashioned from spare fabric Miguel had brought from town, a rocking chair that August built for her after noticing how she paced while soothing Thomas to sleep. A week after her arrival, August returned from town with a package wrapped in brown paper. "Something for you," he said, setting it on the table with an almost shy smile. Inside, Willow found fabric for new dresses, a hairbrush, and a proper bottle for Thomas, a glass one with a rubber nipple. "The shopkeeper's wife recommended it," August explained. "Said it's what her daughter uses for her baby." Tears pricked at Willow's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "This is more than I expected." August shrugged, looking uncomfortable with her gratitude. "If people are to believe we're married, you should have proper things. I told folks in town I'd recently wed, and my wife and new son had just arrived from back east." Willow felt a flash of alarm. "Did anyone seem suspicious?" "No," August assured her. "They were mostly surprised I'd managed to find a wife at all." His eyes crinkled with amusement. "Mrs. Attil's porter at the general store has been trying to match me with her niece for 2 years. She seemed almost relieved I'd found someone else." The mention of town reminded Willow of the danger that still lurked. "Were there any signs of Thornton's men?" August's expression grew more serious. "They passed through about 5 days ago, according to the barkeep at the saloon. Asked questions, showed a description that matched you, but they were headed north." He paused. "They'll be back, though. Men like that don't give up easily." Willow nodded, clutching Thomas closer. The baby had grown stronger in the week since their arrival, his cheeks filling out from the regular feedings of goat's milk and the thin cereal Miguel had taught her to prepare. "We should make our marriage official, at least on paper," August continued. "I spoke with the circuit preacher. He'll be coming through in 3 days' time." Willow stared at him. "You want an actual ceremony?" "I want documentation," August clarified. Something legal that would stand up to scrutiny if Thornton ever challenges your status. A marriage certificate with the territorial seal would make it much harder for him to claim you're still his wife. The practicality of this struck Willow forcefully. Of course, without legal proof, her word against Thornton's would mean nothing, especially given his wealth and influence. "You're right," she agreed. "We should do it properly." 3 days later, Willow stood beside August in their cabin as the circuit preacher, a weathered man named Reverend Johnson, performed a brief ceremony. Miguel served as witness, his usually stoic face breaking into a wide smile as August and Willow exchanged simple vows. Thomas, dressed in a new gown sewn from one of the fabrics August had brought, watched the proceedings from Miguel's arms with wide, curious eyes. "By the authority vested in me by the Arizona Territory, I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher declared. "You may kiss your bride." August hesitated, looking at Willow with a question in his eyes. Understanding that appearances must be maintained, she gave a slight nod. His kiss was gentle, barely more than a brush of lips, but Willow felt an unexpected warmth spread through her at the contact. After the preacher had gone, Miguel produced a bottle of tequila he'd been saving for a special occasion. "To family," he toasted, raising his glass. "May God bless this house and all who dwell within it." That night, true to his word, August made his bed on a pallet in the main room, leaving Willow and Thomas the bedroom. As she lay in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch at night, Willow realized that for the first time since fleeing Thornton, she felt truly safe. The weeks that followed saw a gradual transformation, not just of the cabin into a proper home, but of the relationship between Willow and August. What had begun as an arrangement of convenience slowly evolved into a genuine friendship. August taught Willow about ranch life, how to care for the chickens, milk the goat, and even ride the gentle mare he'd purchased specifically for her. In return, Willow brought organization and comfort to his bachelor existence, cooking meals that went beyond the basic sustenance he'd survived on, and creating a home where before there had simply been shelter. Thomas thrived under their joint care. By his 4th month, he was smiling readily, especially at August, who had taken to carrying the baby with him during his evening chores, pointing out the animals and talking to him as though the infant understood every word. "He's growing attached to you," Willow observed one evening as August rocked Thomas to sleep, the baby's small hand clutching the rancher's finger. August looked down at the sleeping child, a softness in his eyes that made Willow's heart twist strangely. "He's a special boy," he said quietly. "Smart, too. Did you see how he watched the chickens today? Taking everything in?" The pride in his voice was unmistakable, as though Thomas were truly his son. The thought brought both comfort and a strange new anxiety to Willow. Their arrangement had provided safety, but it had also created complications she hadn't anticipated, namely, the growing affection she felt for August Keller. It wasn't just gratitude, though that remained. It was the way he treated Thomas as his own, the respect he showed her opinions, the quiet strength he carried without needing to dominate. In August, she was discovering what a partnership between equals might look like, so different from what she had known with Thornton that it sometimes felt like a dream from which she feared waking. Their peaceful existence was shattered one autumn morning when Miguel rode in from town at a gallop, his usually calm demeanor replaced by urgent worry. "Thornton's men," he said without preamble as August and Willow came out to meet him. "4 of them, asking questions at the saloon. They have a photograph of the Senora." Willow felt the blood drain from her face. "A photograph?" Miguel nodded grimly. "From your wedding to Thornton, I think. They are showing it around, offering $50 to anyone with information." August's expression hardened. "Did anyone recognize her?" "I do not think so. You have been careful, and the Senora has changed much since that picture was taken." Miguel glanced at Willow, whose face had thinned during her flight, and whose once elaborate hairstyle was now replaced by a simple braid. But they are determined. They plan to visit every ranch and homestead within 20 miles. August turned to Willow, his voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. We knew this might happen. We're prepared. Indeed, they had discussed this possibility many times over the past weeks, developing a plan should Thornton's men ever come calling. Now, it seemed, that plan would be put to the test. Miguel, how long do we have? August asked. A day, perhaps less. They were still in town when I left, but they mentioned heading this way by afternoon. August nodded. Then we stick to the plan. Miguel, take the wagon and get the things we discussed from the storage shed. Willow, we need to make this place look like it's been our home together for years, not weeks. While Miguel headed to the small shed where August kept tools and supplies, Willow and August set about transforming the cabin. August retrieved a trunk from the attic, filled with items he'd collected for just this purpose, books with inscriptions to both of them, dated years earlier. Letters addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Keller from fictitious relatives back east, a quilt supposedly made by Willow's grandmother as a wedding gift. Willow, meanwhile, brought out the few keepsakes she'd managed to take when fleeing Thornton her mother's locket, a small book of poetry, Thomas's baby blanket, and positioned them prominently around the cabin. Together, they created the illusion of a long-established marriage, complete with the accumulated trinkets and memories of shared years. By mid-afternoon, they were as ready as they could be. Thomas had been fed and was napping in the bedroom. The cabin looked lived in and personal in a way that would be difficult to fabricate on short notice. Miguel had returned with the additional items, primarily documents August had carefully prepared with the help of a former Army friend who now worked as a clerk in Tucson. Remember, August said as they heard the distant sound of approaching horses. You're Willow Keller, my wife of 3 years. We met in Denver after the war, married and moved here to start our ranch. Thomas is our son, born here with the help of Miguel's sister, who has since returned to Mexico. Willow nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. And Thornton? A name we've never heard before today, August replied firmly. Stay calm. Let me do most of the talking, and if they ask to see Thomas, I'll bring him out myself. Willow finished. I have nothing to hide. The riders approached slowly, dust rising from their horses' hooves as they entered the yard. 4 men, just as Miguel had said, led by a tall figure Willow recognized with a jolt of fear, James Ryder, Thornton's foreman and most trusted enforcer. August squeezed her hand once before stepping onto the porch to greet the visitors, his posture relaxed, but his right hand casually near the revolver at his hip. Willow remained in the doorway, one hand pressed against the frame to stop its trembling. Afternoon. Gentlemen, August called. Something I can help you with? Ryder reined in his horse, studying August with cold eyes. Looking for a woman, he said without preamble. Run away from her husband back east, might have passed through these parts. August frowned slightly, the picture of polite confusion. Don't get many travelers out this way, especially not women alone. What's she look like? Ryder dismounted, reaching into his coat to produce the photograph Miguel had mentioned. Willow Thornton, he said, watching August's face carefully as he handed over the picture. Took off with her husband's money and his unborn child. Man's desperate to find his family. August studied the photograph, a formal portrait of Willow in an elaborate dress, her hair arranged in the latest fashion, her expression carefully blank. Pretty woman, he commented, handing the picture back. But can't say I've seen her. When did she go missing? About 6 months back, Ryder replied. Baby would be born by now. August shook his head. Sorry, I can't help. Like I said, we don't get many strangers out here. He glanced back at Willow. This is my wife, Willow. Been married 3 years now. Ryder's gaze shifted to Willow, and she felt a chill run through her despite the warm afternoon. Forcing herself to step forward, she offered what she hoped was a natural smile. "Good afternoon," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Would you men care for some water? Must be thirsty after your ride." Ryder studied her, his eyes narrowing slightly. For a heart-stopping moment, Willow thought he recognized her, but then he shook his head. "No need. Won't be staying long." He turned back to August. "Mind if we look around? We've been authorized to search all properties in the area." "By whose authority?" August asked mildly. "Mr. Y? Thornton has an arrangement with the territorial marshal," one of the other men spoke up. "Official business." August's expression remained neutral, but Willow saw the tightening around his eyes. "I see. Well, I've nothing to hide. Look all you want. But I'd appreciate it if you'd be quiet around the barn. My son's taking his afternoon nap, and he's a light sleeper." As if on cue, Thomas began to cry from inside the cabin. Willow excused herself, grateful for the chance to escape Ryder's scrutinizing gaze. Inside, she gathered Thomas from his cradle, soothing him with gentle words while her heart raced. When she returned to the porch, Ryder and his men had dismounted and were inspecting the yard. August stood watching them, his posture seemingly relaxed, though Willow could see the tension in his shoulders. "Beautiful boy," Ryder commented as he noticed Thomas in Willow's arms. "How old is he?" "4 months," Willow replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "Born right here with just my husband and our neighbor to help." Ryder looked between Thomas and Willow, clearly calculating dates in his head. "Mind if I see him closer?" Before Willow could respond, August stepped forward. "Actually, I do mind," he said, his voice pleasant but firm. "My son isn't a curiosity for strangers to examine." The tension between the two men was palpable. After a long moment, Ryder shrugged. "Just being thorough. Mr. Thornton's very eager to find his wife and child." "I'm sure he is," August replied. "If we hear anything, we'll be sure to let the marshal know." Ryder nodded, though his expression remained suspicious. "Do that." He turned to his men. "Mount up. We've got more ground to cover before dark." As they rode away, Willow felt her knees weaken with relief. August's arm came around her shoulders, steady and reassuring. "You did well," he murmured. "Very well." "He didn't believe us," Willow said, watching the dust trail left by the departing riders. "Not completely." August nodded grimly. "No, he didn't. Which means they'll be back, with more questions and possibly a warrant next time." He guided her back into the cabin. "We need to be prepared for that possibility." Over the next few days, August increased security around the ranch. Miguel brought news that Thornton's men were still in the area, methodically visiting every homestead and asking questions in town. The photograph of Willow was now posted in several locations, including the general store and the post office, with a substantial reward offered for information. "We should leave," Willow suggested one evening as they sat by the fire after Thomas had been put to bed. "Head west to California, like I originally planned." August shook his head. "Traveling now would be more dangerous than staying. They're watching the roads and the stage lines. Here, at least, we have shelter, supplies, and the legal protection of our marriage. But if they come with a warrant, then we fight it legally," August interrupted. "The documentation we have is solid. Marriage certificate, witness statements, even Thomas's birth record that Miguel's cousin in Tucson backdated for us. Thornton might have influence, but outright fraud would be risky even for him." Willow wasn't convinced. "You don't know him like I do. He doesn't care about laws or consequences when he wants something." August reached across the space between their chairs, taking her hand in his. "I won't let him take you or Thomas. I promise you that." The fierce protectiveness in his voice warmed something deep inside Willow. Over these weeks, August had become more than just her protector, he had become her friend, her partner, and increasingly, something she was afraid to name even to herself. August, she said softly, her fingers tightening around his. Why are you doing all this? The truth. He looked startled by the question, then thoughtful. At first, it was simple enough. I couldn't stand by and watch Thornton hunt down a woman and child. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, the gentle touch sending shivers up her arm. But now... He hesitated, as if searching for the right words. Now? Willow prompted when he didn't continue. August met her gaze, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight. Now it's because I can't imagine this place without you and Thomas in it. You've made it a home, Willow. You've made it whole. The raw honesty in his voice took her breath away. Without thinking, Willow leaned forward, closing the distance between them until her lips met his. Unlike their brief kiss during the wedding ceremony, this one lingered, deepening as August's hand came up to cradle her face with tender reverence. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, August rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that for weeks, he admitted. Willow smiled, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the nearby fire. Why didn't you? I promised you time, he reminded her. Space to decide what you wanted. And if what I want is you, Willow whispered, surprised by her own boldness. August's answer was another kiss, this one more passionate than the first. When they separated again, he stood, drawing her to her feet. Are you sure? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. I need you to be sure. In answer, Willow took his hand and led him toward the bedroom where, for the first time since their marriage, they would truly be husband and wife. Later, lying in August's arms with her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, Willow felt a sense of peace she had thought lost forever. This wasn't the forced submission she had endured with Thornton, but a joining of equals tender, passionate, and freely given. I love you, August murmured against her hair. I think I have since I found you hiding in that canyon. Willow raised herself on one elbow to look at him, tracing the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. I love you too, she replied, the words feeling right and true. You saved us. August shook his head slightly. You saved yourself by having the courage to run. I just offered a safe place to land. The peaceful interlude was shattered the next morning by the sound of multiple horses entering the yard. August was already up, having risen at dawn to tend to the animals. Willow quickly dressed and went to check on Thomas, who was still sleeping peacefully in his cradle. Through the window, she saw August standing in the yard, facing a group of riders more than before, at least 8 men, with Ryder at their head. Beside him sat a figure that made Willow's blood run cold. George Thornton himself, his broad frame and silver-streaked dark hair unmistakable even at a distance. Fear clutched at her throat, but she forced it down. They had prepared for this. Taking a deep breath, she lifted Thomas from his cradle, soothing him as he stirred, and moved to the main room of the cabin. Through the open door, she could hear Thornton's voice, loud and demanding. I know she's here, Keller. My men described your wife in detail, and she matches Willow perfectly. The timing of the child's birth aligns exactly with when she fled. Stop this charade and produce my wife and son. August's response was too low for Willow to hear. But Thornton's angry retort carried clearly. I have a warrant signed by Judge Hollister himself. Either you cooperate, or I'll have the marshal arrest you for kidnapping and theft. Taking another steadying breath, Willow stepped onto the porch. Thomas cradled protectively in her arms. All eyes turned to her, and she forced herself to meet Thornton's gaze directly. George, she acknowledged, her voice calmer than she felt. Thornton's face twisted with triumph. Willow, it's time to come home. You've caused enough trouble. August moved to stand beside her, his hand coming to rest supportively at the small of her back. "My wife isn't going anywhere," he said firmly. "Your wife?" Thornton laughed, the sound harsh and without humor. "This woman is Willow Thornton, my lawfully wedded wife who fled our home 6 months ago, stealing my property and carrying my child." "I'm afraid you're mistaken," August replied evenly. "This is Willow Keller, my wife of 3 years. I have the documentation to prove it." Thornton dismounted, his movements betraying his irritation. "Documentation can be forged. Blood cannot." He gestured toward Thomas. "That child is my son and heir. I've come to take him home, along with his mother." "Thomas is my son," August stated, his voice hardening. "Born here on this ranch 4 months ago." Thornton turned to the man beside him, whom Willow recognized as the territorial marshal. "You've seen the evidence, Marshal, the photograph, the marriage certificate from Missouri, the testimonies from my household staff. This woman is my wife, and that child is my son." The marshal, a weathered man with a graying mustache, looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Keller, if you have documentation proving your claim, now would be the time to produce it." August nodded. "Miguel," he called, and the ranch hand emerged from the barn carrying a small wooden box. From it, August removed several documents, which he handed to the marshal. "Our marriage certificate dated 3 years ago in Denver. Statements from witnesses to our wedding, including the preacher who performed the ceremony. Thomas's birth record, signed by the midwife who attended his birth." August's voice remained steady. "Everything in order, as you'll see." The marshal examined the documents with a frown, then looked up at Thornton. "These appear legitimate, Mr. Thornton." "Of course they appear legitimate," Thornton snapped. "They were manufactured specifically to deceive." He turned to Willow. "Tell them the truth, Willow. Tell them who you really are." Willow tightened her hold on Thomas, who had begun to fuss, sensing the tension. "I am Willow Keller," she said clearly. "August's wife and Thomas's mother. I've never been to Missouri, and until today, I'd never met you, Mr. Thornton." Thornton's face darkened with rage. "You lying little—" "That's enough," the marshal interrupted. "This is becoming a matter for the courts to decide." He looked between August and Thornton. "Both of you have documentation supporting your claims. Until a judge can review the evidence, I suggest—" "I'm not leaving without my wife and son," Thornton cut in. "I've waited 6 months already. I won't wait another day." "You don't have a choice," August replied, his hand now resting on the pistol at his hip. "The law will decide this matter, not force." The tension in the yard was palpable, with Thornton's men shifting restlessly in their saddles, hands hovering near their weapons. For a moment Willow feared violence would erupt, with Thomas caught in the middle. Then, from the road, came the sound of approaching riders. All heads turned to see a group of men entering the yard ranchers from neighboring properties, led by a tall figure Willow recognized as Samuel Davis, whose land bordered August's to the east. "Thought you might need some neighbors today, Keller," Davis called as he dismounted. "Miguel stopped by early this morning, mentioned you had visitors." More than a dozen men filed into the yard, positioning themselves casually but unmistakably on August's side of the confrontation. Thornton's numerical advantage had suddenly evaporated. The marshal looked relieved at the interruption. "As I was saying, this matter will be decided by the territorial court. In the meantime, Mrs. Keller and her child will remain here with her husband until the hearing." "When?" Thornton demanded. "Judge Hollister will be in Tucson next week," the marshal replied. "You can present your case then." Thornton glared at August, then at Willow. "This isn't over," he stated flatly. "That child is mine, and I will have him." "The child belongs with his mother," August replied, "and his mother belongs where she chooses to be." For a tense moment it seemed Thornton might defy the marshal's decision. Then, with a curt nod, He remounted his horse. 1 week, he said, and then we'll see what your forged papers are worth. As Thornton and his men rode away, the neighbors gathered around August and Willow, offering support and reassurances. Davis clapped August on the shoulder. "Never thought I'd see the day you'd have a wife and child, Keller," he said with a grin. "But I have to say, family life suits you." August's arm tightened around Willow's waist. "Yes, it does." After the neighbors departed, promising to return if needed, August, Willow, and Miguel gathered in the cabin to discuss their next steps. "Thornton won't wait for the hearing if he thinks he can take Thomas by force," Willow said, pacing the floor with the baby in her arms. "He'll come back, probably at night." August nodded grimly. "I know. Which is why you and Thomas won't be here." Willow stopped pacing. "What do you mean?" "Miguel's cousin has a place near the Mexican border," August explained. "You'll go there tonight, stay until after the hearing." "And leave you to face Thornton alone?" Willow shook her head. "No. We stay together." "Willow." "No, August." Her voice was firm. "We're a family now. We face this together." August looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, together. But we'll need help." Over the next few days, the ranch became a virtual fortress. Neighbors took turns standing watch, and Miguel's relatives from nearby settlements came to offer support. Word had spread about Thornton's attempt to claim another man's wife and child, and the community had rallied around the young family. The night before they were to travel to Tucson for the hearing, August and Willow sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Thomas slept peacefully in Willow's arms, his small face relaxed in the innocence of childhood. "Whatever happens tomorrow," August said softly, "know that these past months have been the happiest of my life." Willow leaned against his shoulder. "We'll win," she said, with more confidence than she felt. "The truth is on our side." "Truth doesn't always prevail against money and influence," August replied, his arm tightening around her. "But we have something Thornton doesn't." "What's that?" August smiled down at her. "A community that stands together. And love. Never underestimate what a person will do for love." The territorial courthouse in Tucson was packed the following day. Word of the unusual case had spread, drawing curious onlookers from throughout the region. Thornton sat at one table with his lawyer, a slick-looking man from San Francisco. August and Willow sat at the other, represented by a younger attorney Miguel's cousin had recommended. Judge Hollister, a stern-faced man with penetrating gray eyes, called the court to order. "This is a most unusual case," he began, "two men claiming the same woman as wife and the same child as son. I intend to get to the bottom of this matter today." Thornton's lawyer presented his case first to the marriage certificate from Missouri, sworn statements from household staff, and the photograph of Willow in her wedding dress. He painted a picture of a troubled young woman who had fled with her husband's child in a fit of postpartum confusion. "Mr. Thornton seeks only to reunite his family and provide for his son," the lawyer concluded smoothly. "He bears no ill will toward Mr. Keller, who is clearly deceived by Mrs. Thornton's fabrications." When it was their turn, August and Willow's lawyer presented their documentation, the Denver marriage certificate, statements from neighbors attesting to their 3 years together on the ranch, Thomas's birth record. "But most compelling, Your Honor," the young attorney said, "is the testimony of those who knew Mrs. Keller before her alleged marriage to Mr. Thornton." A murmur ran through the courtroom as an elderly woman was called to the witness stand. She identified herself as Martha Jenkins, former school teacher from Denver. "I taught Willow Ellis, now Keller, for 3 years," she stated firmly. "After her parents died, I helped arrange her marriage to August Keller, a former student of mine who had moved to Arizona Territory." "And when was this marriage?" the judge asked. 3 years ago this past spring," Mrs. Jenkins replied without hesitation. I have the correspondence to prove it. She produced a bundle of letters which were submitted as evidence. More witnesses followed: a shopkeeper from Denver who remembered selling Willow her wedding dress, a former Army comrade of August's who had attended their wedding, even the preacher who claimed to have performed the ceremony. Thornton grew increasingly agitated as the testimony continued, whispering furiously to his lawyer. When it was his turn for cross-examination, he confronted Willow directly. "You expect this court to believe this elaborate fiction," he demanded, "that you've been married to Keller for 3 years when I have proof of our marriage last year in Missouri?" Willow met his gaze steadily. "I have never been to Missouri, Mr. Thornton. I have never been your wife. The woman in that photograph may resemble me, but she is not me." "This is absurd!" Thornton exploded. "Your Honor, I demand a more thorough investigation. This woman is my wife, Willow Thornton, and that child is my son." Judge Hollister frowned at the outburst. "Control yourself, Mr. Thornton, or I'll have you removed from my courtroom." As the arguments continued, a commotion at the back of the room drew everyone's attention. A woman entered, escorted by Miguel. She was elegantly dressed, with dark blonde hair arranged in a stylish coiffure, and she bore a striking resemblance to Willow. The courtroom fell silent as she walked forward. Thornton's face drained of color. "Your Honor," Miguel announced, "may I present Mrs. Willow Thornton, recently arrived from St. Louis." The woman curtsied slightly. "George," she acknowledged, her voice cool as she addressed her stunned husband. "I received your urgent message about our son being kidnapped. Imagine my surprise, since I have never borne a child." Chaos erupted in the courtroom. Thornton leapt to his feet, shouting accusations of conspiracy and fraud. The judge pounded his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. When quiet was finally restored, the woman who claimed to be the real Willow Thornton took the stand. She identified herself as Elizabeth Willow Thornton, explaining that she went by her middle name in social circles. "I married George Thornton 18 months ago in Missouri, shortly after the death of his son from his previous marriage," she testified. "Our relationship has been strained. 3 months ago, he sent me to stay with my sister in St. Louis, claiming the Arizona climate was too harsh for my constitution." She produced her own documentation: marriage certificate, family Bible entries, even letters from Thornton himself addressed to "my darling Willow." "I believe my husband became fixated on this unfortunate woman," she continued, gesturing toward Willow, "who bears some resemblance to me. As for his claim of a son—" She turned to look directly at Thornton. "George was injured in a riding accident as a young man. The doctors told him he could never father children. His son from his first marriage was adopted, though few knew this." The revelation struck the courtroom like a thunderbolt. Thornton lunged forward but was restrained by the marshal and his deputies. "You lying whore!" he shouted. "You had no right to come here." "Remove Mr. Thornton from my courtroom," Judge Hollister ordered, his expression severe, "and place him under arrest for perjury and attempting to pervert the course of justice." As Thornton was dragged away, still shouting threats and accusations, the judge turned to August and Willow. "It appears, Mr. and Mrs. Keller, that you have been subjected to a most grievous persecution. The court apologizes for your ordeal." Relief washed over Willow in a dizzying wave. August's arm came around her shoulders, steady and supportive as always. "Thank you, Your Honor," August replied. "All we want is to return to our home and raise our son in peace." The judge nodded. "And so you shall. This case is dismissed." Outside the courthouse, they found Elizabeth Thornton waiting. Up close, the resemblance to Willow was even more striking, though Elizabeth was perhaps a few years older and carried herself with the confident poise of wealth and social standing. "I apologize for my husband's actions," she said quietly. "When I received word of what he was doing, I felt I had to intervene." How did you find out? Willow asked. Elizabeth's smile was sad. George's first wife was my cousin. I've known about his tendencies for many years. When Miguel's letter reached me in St. Louis, describing you and the situation, I knew immediately what was happening. Miguel? August turned to his ranch hand in surprise. Miguel shrugged, looking somewhat embarrassed. My cousin in Tucson has connections with the staff at Thornton's ranch. When I described the Senora to him, he mentioned the real Mrs. Thornton was away in St. Louis. It seemed worth investigating. August clasped Miguel's shoulder warmly. You may have saved our family. What will happen to Thornton now? Willow asked Elizabeth. He faces serious charges, Elizabeth replied. And I shall be filing for divorce immediately. His obsession with having an heir led him to this madness, but it ends today. She glanced at Thomas, sleeping peacefully in Willow's arms. You have a beautiful family, Mrs. Keller. Cherish it. With those words, she turned and walked away, a solitary figure of dignity and resilience. The journey back to the ranch was quiet, each of them processing the dramatic events of the day. When they crested the final rise and saw the cabin in the distance, smoke rising peacefully from the chimney, Willow felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. Home, she whispered. August smiled, reaching across to take her hand. Home, he agreed. That evening, with Thomas asleep in his cradle and Miguel gone to visit his family, August and Willow sat on the porch steps, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. What happens now? Willow asked, her head resting on August's shoulder. Now? August considered the question. Now we live our lives. Raise our son. Maybe have more children someday, if you want that. Willow smiled, taking his hand and placing it on her stomach. Someday might be sooner than you think. August's eyes widened as he understood her meaning. You're certain? Willow nodded, her heart full as she watched joy spread across his face. The doctor in Tucson confirmed it yesterday. We'll have another little one come spring. August gathered her into his arms, his kiss filled with promise and love. When they finally separated, he rested his forehead against hers. When I found you hiding in that canyon, I never imagined how completely you would change my life. When you knelt beside me and said, "Show me, he's ours now," you changed mine, Willow replied softly. You gave me back my faith in good men, in love, in possibilities. August smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face with gentle fingers. And you gave me a family, something I never thought I'd have after the war. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the moon rise over the desert landscape that had become their home. The dangers they had faced, Thornton's obsession, the threat of separation, the uncertainty of their future all seemed to fade in the peaceful evening. I love you, Willow Keller, August whispered into her hair, more than I ever thought possible. And I love you, August Keller, Willow replied, her heart full of gratitude for the man who had knelt beside her in her darkest hour and offered not just protection, but partnership. In the years that followed, the Keller Ranch prospered. Thomas grew into a strong, thoughtful boy with his mother's quiet determination and his father's steady ways. He was joined by a sister the following spring, Little Rose, named for August's mother, and later by two more brothers. The story of how August and Willow had met became something of a legend in the territory. Sometimes, when neighbors gathered at their home for celebrations, someone would inevitably ask Willow to tell the tale. I was hiding with my baby, certain we would be found. She would begin, her eyes meeting August's across the room. And then this cowboy knelt beside me and said, "Show me, he's ours now." And in that moment, though I didn't know it yet, I found my future. August would smile at her words, the love between them as strong and true as it had been that first day in the canyon. For they had discovered together what neither could have found alone, that family isn't always defined by blood, but by choice, by commitment, and by a love strong enough to weather any storm. In the wild vastness of the Arizona territory, they had built something precious and rare. A home where fear had no place, where love grew deeper with each passing season, and where two people who had once been strangers now shared a bond that neither time nor distance could ever break.